A lot of planning systems promise simplicity. What they don't always account for is complexity, not just in the tools, but in the work itself and in the different ways that people think. When too many different kinds of work are forced to live together, even a simple system can start to look overcrowded or feel overwhelming to some people. I noticed that for me, having the different kinds of work in one container actually created more friction. Different things that I need to do in my life require different energy and attention, and having them in one container, it wasn't good at holding all of those different things. In my last couple videos, especially the last one, I talked about the idea of smaller containers and letting things like projects, one-off tasks, and upkeep and maintenance things live in separate places rather than all together. I kept that discussion fairly generic because I wanted to let people see themselves in the situations that I was talking about. I was afraid if I started right in with tools and you don't use the tool that I use, or you don't like or don't know about the tool that I use, it might be more about the tools rather than the thoughts behind them. Many of you were interested or intrigued by the idea, but wanted to see it and work in real life, and so this is that video. Where things live now. OmniFocus is my home for one-off tasks. It's my comfort digital app. It's my comfort task system. If something it comes into my world and it's reasonably sure that it's going to be a one-off task that I'm not going to do immediately, it's going to go into OmniFocus. I'll talk more in a bit on how it gets into there. I'm trying to keep my OmniFocus setup very basic. I'm not using tags at all right now. I'm only using the inbox and one other view, and I'm just using different lists, projects in OmniFocus, but lists that are differentiated along different types of lines. In the past, I'd always want them differentiated the same. I would start with areas of focus and then projects, but this time I'm allowing myself to have different lists be sliced differently. So the first couple are roughly time-based lists. I have one that's kind of today-ish, or the next couple days. I have one that's kind of within the next week. Nothing that I expect to do today, but things that are easy enough that I should be able to get through them in a week. And then I have a few that are either energy or attention-based. I have some that are priority-ish based, and a couple by area of life. I've realized actually I'm using the projects or the lists in OmniFocus more like tags, but it's working for me, so I'm not going to mess with it. At least once a week I go through the lists and make sure that everything is where it needs to be, promote some things to those time-sensitive ones, and promote or demote things in the priority ones, and just make sure everything is aligned. Ironically, when I came back to OmniFocus, initially I was just going to put projects in it. I was already starting to think of different containers for different things. But as usual, I got sucked in. I love the playing with the different perspectives and tags and making different views, and I then start resisting it. So I took the projects out because I realized it's better for me as a task manager instead of a project manager. And Parker says it's working very well now. I don't like trying to remember which kind of perspective I use for which kind of work and at what time, so I am not doing that this time. Once I took projects out, OmniFocus only holds one-off tasks in a few very specifically curated lists, and that's working for me. Projects. I'll do a section specifically on projects later, but why I moved them out of OmniFocus, both I realized that tasks were not the be-all end-all for my projects. I wanted to be able to gather reference materials, links and images and videos, and I also wanted to be able to sort and filter them differently. So I tried paper for a while so I could shuffle things around, but ultimately I wanted them digital, and I have a very simple Notion database for them right now. More on that later. Upkeep is the area that is the most in flux for me, partly because it's the most important, or the one I'm focusing on the most right now, and partly because it just is so different from project or task-based stuff. There's the recurring nature of it. Yes, it needs to be done, but so much of it is not that it needs to be done on a particular schedule. And so I'm just never 100% sure what I want. I am right now 100% sure what I don't want. I don't want a digital system that has things recurring on specific deadlines and repeat frequencies. I do have a few things in Apple Reminders that are very deadline based, but not a whole bunch, because I know if I put too much on that, I tend to ignore it, and I really have in the past let them stack up, and that is not helping anybody. The newest thing for me is I am starting an index card based system for home cleaning and maintenance. Many people have recommended the Sidetracked Home Executive or She system, and I've used it before, I've tried it before, I have the book. I'm starting much more limited this time. I'm just putting cleaning and maintenance for the house only, not the garden, nothing administrative. So I'm starting with less than they recommend, just to try to see if the system's going to work for me. And I've set up kind of a temporary system with supplies I had on hand. Amazon just dropped off the rest as I've been recording, so I'll set up more with color coding and stuff over the next few days or week. But the She system includes things like finances and birthdays and meal planning. I'm not including those. I'm going to start much more simple. I'm starting with only the home stuff, and I may end up adding more later. We'll see. We'll see if it works. I know in the past I've watched people on YouTube that even add more into the system, goal setting and memory keeping, and that was definitely my downfall last time. Once again, I try to put everything into the same system, and then the system explodes or just gets walked away from. So that's why this time, much more simple. I also am still using my clipboard with the trackers, and I thought about putting some of that into there because there's a lot of things that is in the She system that I keep track of on the clipboards, but for now, I'm going to keep those where they are, and then eventually I'll decide if I should move them or not. The clipboard has the kind of daily routine type stuff and some of the weekly appointments with myself, checklists of things to do less frequently. I was doing more stuff for upkeep in a personal ring setup. I still have that, but it's not a tracking tasks kind of thing. It's more of a documentation and workflows type of a thing for now. I mentioned simplicity versus complexity earlier, and yes, there's some ways that it would be simpler if everything was in one big system, but I'm pretty happy with the way things are going with the split. There are a few areas of overlap where I have to make decisions where something goes, and yeah, that is a little source of friction, but that is still better to me than having to try to fit things into one system that works great for one type of information, but things have to be massaged for another kind of information to fit into it. I don't like having to remember, which way I like to work in one tool for this kind of work or that kind of work. This way, one kind of work, one tool, different kind of work, different tool. Capture is an area that really needs to be thought through well when you are using different containers. We need to be able to trust our system, so we need to know where things need to end up and how they're going to get there. That's definitely been an issue that I have worried about, and I'm sure you have too, but so far I think it's working out pretty well. My primary method of capture has been and continues to be Apple Reminders, often with Siri, and it covers about half or more of the things that I need to take care of. When I get them into reminders, they're passed. Most of them are passed through directly to my OmniFocus inbox. The only time they're not is if it's location based, and that is fine. Usually those are things that are going to happen right away. If I'm on my phone, I sometimes use an OmniFocus shortcut to the inbox there. I don't use the OmniFocus iPhone app beyond that much. I'm not a fan, but in a pinch I do. I also try not to do much in Notion on my phone unless it's just retrieving information. I don't do a lot of entering things, but it is there if I need it. And most of the things that I want to do or think about or take care of are going to go into OmniFocus, and if there are one-off tasks, that's where they're going to live. If they are an upkeep thing, it's at this point going to be I need to make a card, so the task is make a card, or if it's something about a project, it would be phrased to update the project. And so that's still that one-off task that needs to make it, so it does make another step to get there, but the trade-off has been worth it for me. And if I'm at my desk, I, can just make the card or put it into Notion or whatever. That happens often too, as long as it's not disruptive. If it's disruptive, I make the note to do it later in OmniFocus. And then lastly, I pretty much always have a post-it note on my daily page with a quick little to-do list. And it sometimes runs one day, sometimes it'll stick around for a few days, and then I just migrate things to the following post-it if they're still relevant in the next day or so, and sometimes those get pushed off into OmniFocus for a later date, or again, now that I'm going to be using the cards, it might mean I determine that there's something that needs to get a card. Still working that out. Does anyone else have a dog that burrows in the carpet when he's nervous? I do. Now on to what I call Projects Plus. And I mentioned that I moved them out of OmniFocus because I knew I wanted to gather more information about my projects, and that projects for me aren't always super task-based. They're more information-based. I want to be able to gather that stuff, but I also definitely want to be able to shuffle them around more. And another important thing is they all look a little different, but the most important thing was I wanted to be able to sort and filter them and see lists of them or groups of them in different ways easily. I had been in and out of Notion for years. I have been in and out of Notion for years. And broken record here, yeah, I end up thinking I'll keep it simple, and then I have multiple interrelated databases and dashboards, and I will not do that this time. I do have a little bit more than projects in it, but only reference information, no other databases at this time. But my projects database, I have different views that are working well for me. Why do I call it Projects Plus? Well, I did a couple of videos a while ago about projects that aren't and stuck projects, and around that time I had realized that I had these projects that just hung around and they were always really weighing on me. Even when I was in OmniFocus, I had them separated out into like my real projects, pushing things ahead, and then my backlog projects, which were taking care of things that were built up maintenance that had become so big it needed to be a project. When I went to Notion, that continued. But in that time, I also realized I needed a third type. And that third type I'm calling incremental. I started out calling them evergreen. I called them little and often once upon a time because they're not task-based. They're like, I'm going to work on this for 20 minutes. I'm going to work on this for an hour. It's not, I'm going to do this step, this step, this step. It's more time-based. So those I'm calling incremental. So now in Notion, I can have those 3 different types of projects. And what I'm doing is I have my backlog group and I have a couple of them active. I have my incremental group. I have a couple of them active. And then I have my winter projects and I have a couple of them active. And that is working out really well for me. I said Projects Plus because when I was just calling that projects, it just felt really dishonest. And I tried for a while calling them commitments, and that was way too fuzzy. So Projects Plus. I've been extremely successful so far this month, this year, in finishing projects that hadn't been finished most of last year, hadn't been touched most of last year. And so I always wanted to be the type of person that could plan, hey, here's my quarter, I'm going to do this for 3 weeks, and this one will take me 2 weeks, and these two can live together. I wanted to have those timelines all planned out. It just never worked for me. So at this point, I go through weekly and I make sure I don't have too many things active, and I pause them when they need to because I want to bring something else active. I don't have a set number that I keep active, but I just try to keep the number low enough that I think it's reasonable that I can work on them all within the same week. And having that flexibility to put things forward and backwards, active and pause and active, it's been really great for me. Another helpful thing I mentioned in my reducing friction video is I now have my seasonal focus map over next to my monitor. Under each area of life, I have any active projects, backlog, and incremental there. And when I'm finished the project, I cross it out. If I paused it, I cross it out in pencil and write paused. If I move things ahead, if I work on them but I haven't completed them, I put a dot next to them to just show that some progress was made. And that visual feedback has been amazing for me. Smaller containers aren't about having more systems. They're about giving the different kinds of work the space that it needs to help you when you need it to help you. For me, what makes this multi-part system work is having my weekly planning, weekly reset, weekly review, whatever you want to call it, having the time when I promote things, demote things, activate, pause, plan out the week. It's definitely a necessity. And as usual, this is all a work in progress, but in terms of how I'm feeling about things and the output that I'm getting, things are looking good. If you're interested in the type of things that I've been talking about here, take a look here. If it's available, I'll have some kind of an update there that's the most related, and just over here in general, it'll be good places for you to go on this kind of stuff. Thanks.